Earlier this year, at the age of 38, I resigned from my corporate job. I have an 8-year-old daughter, a family, monthly expenses, responsibilities. So when I left my job, many people around me were confused. Some of my office colleagues thought I was making an emotional decision that I would regret later. But the truth was much simpler than that. I was just tired. Not physically tired only, mentally tired. For more than a decade, my life had followed the same routine. Wake up early with an alarm, rush to the office, work all day, come home exhausted, sleep thinking about the next morning. And slowly, without realizing it, I felt like my life no longer belonged to me. The strange thing is, from the outside, everything looked good. I had a respectable engineering career, a stable salary, office facilities, and the kind of job many people work very hard to get. But inside, I felt trapped. In today's video, I want to share the full story of why I left that life behind and what finally pushed me to choose freedom over stability after 12 years in the corporate world. I graduated in civil engineering at the end of 2011. Like most fresh graduates, I was excited about starting my career. Getting a corporate job felt like a big achievement at that time. My family was happy. Relatives were happy. It felt like life was finally starting. In 2012, I joined a large corporate company as an engineer. At first, everything felt new and professional. Big office buildings, meetings, ID cards, formal dress, office transport. It all looked impressive from the outside. But after a few months, I slowly started understanding what corporate life actually was. My office hours officially started at 9 in the morning and ended at 6 in the evening, but in reality, it rarely ended at 6. Some days I had to stay much longer because of deadlines, reports, project pressure, or sudden instructions from managers. I would return home exhausted. After dinner, I barely had enough energy left to do anything meaningful. Most nights, I would just set an alarm for the next morning and go to sleep thinking about office work again. Then the same routine repeated. Wake up early, rush through traffic, work all day, come home tired, sleep, repeat. At some point, days started blending together. Sometimes weeks passed so quickly that I could barely remember what I had actually done besides working. My parents lived in our village back then. Every couple of months, I would apply for just 3 days of leave to visit them. Only 3 days. But even for that, I often had to request my manager multiple times. And honestly, that used to bother me a lot. I remember thinking to myself, how did my life become something where I need permission just to spend a few days with my parents? The larger the company was, the more rules there seemed to be. From the outside, big companies look organized and successful, but inside, many of them quietly take control of people's time and personal lives little by little. Of course, important work needs to be done. I understood that. But I also noticed something else. There were many unnecessary tasks that existed only to keep people busy. And sometimes, certain managers made the environment even worse. My manager was extremely ambitious. He always wanted to impress upper management. Because of that, he often stayed late at the office himself and expected others to do the same. Even when work was not urgent, he would sometimes create pressure and present everything like an emergency. At first, I tried to be as efficient as possible. I used to finish my assigned tasks early and submit them quickly, hoping maybe I could relax for a while afterward. But instead, whenever I finished early, more work appeared. Sometimes unimportant work, sometimes other people's unfinished tasks. It took me a few years to realize something simple. In some corporate environments, efficiency is not rewarded with freedom, it is rewarded with more work. So that became my life for the next several years. And the strange thing is, externally, my life looked stable. The company paid well, I had office transportation, professional respect, and the kind of career many people spend years trying to build. If someone looked at my life from outside, they probably would have said, he's doing well. But internally,
I felt completely different. I felt like I was slowly losing myself. Before joining corporate life, I was a very different person. Back in university, I loved freedom. I loved traveling. A few of my close friends and I had a small travel group. Whenever we got a short break or a few free days, we would go somewhere together. Sometimes nearby places, sometimes long trips with very little money in our pockets. Those trips were simple, but I still remember them clearly. Long bus rides, cheap hotels, tea stalls beside highways, laughing late at night with friends. At that time, life felt open. I could wake up one morning and suddenly decide to go somewhere. I could make plans without asking anyone for permission. But after entering corporate life, even a single free day became difficult. Whenever I asked for leave, managers would immediately start mentioning project deadlines, meetings, pending tasks, site work, or office pressure.
And slowly, I started asking myself a question that stayed in my mind for years. Am I really supposed to live like this for the rest of my life? Because honestly, this was not the life I had imagined for myself. I wasn't dreaming about becoming extremely rich. I just wanted ownership over my own time. I wanted to breathe a little. I wanted mornings that did not begin with stress. Around early 2014, something happened that quietly changed the direction of my life. One night after work, I was watching random videos on YouTube. I came across a video where a man talked about financial freedom and how he had slowly built investments over many years while working a normal job. He explained how he regularly invested part of his salary into the stock market until eventually the income from those investments became enough to support his basic living expenses. At first, the whole idea sounded unrealistic to me. The amount of money he talked about felt impossibly large. I remember thinking, this might work for people in other countries, but probably not for someone like me. Still, something about that idea stayed in my mind. Not luxury, not becoming rich, just freedom. That was the part I could not stop thinking about. So very quietly, without telling almost anyone, I started changing my lifestyle. I reduced unnecessary expenses. I stopped spending money carelessly. And little by little, month after month, I started investing small amounts into the stock market. At that time, the amounts were very small. Honestly, it felt insignificant. Sometimes I wondered if I was wasting my time. But I kept going anyway, not because I was confident, but because deep inside, I knew I could not survive decades of corporate life without some kind of escape plan. In 2017, I got married. Then, in 2018, my daughter was born. That period of my life changed me in many ways. Before marriage, work pressure mostly affected only me, but after becoming a husband and later a father, I started feeling the weight of time differently. Because no matter how busy office life became, there was now a small family waiting for me at home. But the problem was, corporate life does not slow down just because your personal life changes. If anything, the responsibilities become heavier. As the years passed, office work became more demanding, projects became larger, deadlines became tighter, phone calls continued even after office hours sometimes. And like many other employees, I became trapped between two different worlds. At work, I was thinking about my family. At home, I was thinking about unfinished office tasks.
I think many working people understand this feeling. You are physically present somewhere, but mentally somewhere else. Sometimes I even thought about resigning back then, but the reality was simple. How would I support my family without a stable salary? That question alone kept me in the job for years. So I continued. Every morning when I left for work, my daughter was usually still sleeping, and when I returned home at night, the best part of my day would begin for a few minutes. As soon as I opened the door, she would come running toward me. She would hug me immediately. Sometimes she would start talking nonstop about her entire day before I could even change my clothes. Those moments mattered to me more than anything, but at the same time, they also made me sad, because deep down, I knew I was missing most of her childhood while sitting in meetings, construction sites, and office rooms. There was one particular day in 2024 that I still remember very clearly. It was my daughter's birthday. Back then, I was working on a building construction project. The concrete casting work for the third-floor roof slab had been scheduled on the same day. I spoke with my manager beforehand and told him I needed leave because of my daughter's birthday. He told me, "The work should finish by afternoon. You can leave early afterward." Honestly, even hearing that response irritated me, because it reminded me again that even on important personal days, my own time still did not fully belong to me. But I stayed quiet and went to work. Then, around midday, one of the concrete pump machines suddenly broke down. The ready-mix company that supplied our concrete was also responsible for the pumps. We requested a replacement machine immediately, but they informed us that all their other pumps were already operating at different sites, so we had no choice except to wait for repairs. Hours passed. The work slowed down badly because only one pump was functioning. The entire schedule collapsed. By the time the casting work finally finished, it was already evening. Then traffic and the long drive back home. I reached home around 10 p.m. that night. The birthday was basically over. I still remember entering the house feeling mentally empty. Not angry, not emotional, just tired. That day made something very clear to me. Corporate jobs do not only take your labor, sometimes they quietly take away moments of life that you can never get back again.
Over the years, conversations about work became very common among my colleagues. Sometimes during lunch breaks, site visits, or late evenings at the office, we would talk honestly about our lives. And the funny thing was, almost nobody actually liked the life we were living. Most people were tired. Some wanted to start businesses. Some dreamed about farming, small shops, or doing something completely different. Very few people truly wanted to continue corporate life forever, but almost everyone stayed for the same reason: responsibility, loans, parents, children, monthly expenses, fear of uncertainty. So people kept going, year after year. Meanwhile, I continued investing quietly. From 2014 onward, every month, I kept putting aside money into the stock market. There were periods when the market went down badly and I questioned myself again, but I kept reminding myself that this was not a short-term plan. I wasn't trying to become rich quickly. I was trying to slowly buy back my future freedom. That mindset helped me continue. Over time, the investments slowly grew larger. Not suddenly, not dramatically, just gradually over many years. And then, eventually, sometime around late 2025 into early 2026, I sat down one night and seriously calculated my finances. I looked at my investment portfolio carefully. Then I calculated our family's basic monthly expenses: house rent, food, utilities, education costs, small necessary expenses. Nothing luxurious. No expensive vacations, no luxury lifestyle, no expensive shopping. Just a simple life. Then I realized something surprising. If I reorganized my investments into strong dividend-paying stocks, the dividend income alone could probably cover our basic living expenses. Not a luxurious life, but enough to survive without depending on a corporate salary. I remember sitting quietly after realizing that, because for the first time in many years, resignation no longer felt impossible. Of course, I was still scared, very scared actually. Leaving a stable job after more than a decade is not something people do casually, especially when they have a child and family responsibilities.
For weeks, I kept thinking about it repeatedly. What if something goes wrong? What if I regret this later? But another thought kept returning again and again. If I don't leave now, then when? because I could already feel what my future would look like if nothing changed. More deadlines, more stress, more years disappearing quietly inside office buildings. And one day, I would wake up old, financially stable maybe, but emotionally exhausted. I didn't want that anymore. So, in February 2026, after thinking about it for a very long time, I finally resigned from my job. Not because I had become wealthy, not because I had everything figured out. I left because I wanted my life back. The first few days after resigning felt strange. For more than 14 years, my life had followed a strict routine. Suddenly, that routine disappeared. No alarm in the morning, no office calls, no traffic, no manager waiting for updates. At first, my mind almost could not believe it. For years, I had been sleeping with stress about the next day's work already running in the background of my mind. Even during weekends, I never felt completely relaxed. There was always some unfinished task, upcoming deadline, or office issue sitting quietly inside my head. But after leaving the job, something slowly changed. I started sleeping properly again. Gradually, I noticed something I had not felt in years: peace. Simple peace. Now I can sleep without setting an alarm. Some mornings I wake up early naturally. Some mornings I sleep longer. And honestly, that small freedom still feels unusual to me sometimes. For many people, these things may sound very ordinary, but when your entire adult life has been controlled by schedules and office pressure, even simple freedom starts feeling valuable. These days, I spend much more time with my family. I can sit with my daughter without constantly checking office messages in my head. I can take walks in the evening. Sometimes I simply sit quietly with tea and think about life. And one thing I realized after leaving corporate life is this: human beings need unstructured time. Not every hour of life should belong to productivity. Not every moment needs to generate money. For years, I ignored that part of myself. I treated rest almost like a reward that had to be earned after exhaustion. But now I understand that peace of mind itself has value. Of course, this life is not perfect. I still think about money sometimes. I still think carefully before spending. I know that my current lifestyle depends on maintaining discipline, and I also know that I cannot live carelessly. But strangely, even with financial uncertainty, I feel mentally lighter now than I did while earning a corporate salary, because my time finally feels like my own again. That feeling is difficult to explain unless someone has experienced the opposite for many years. I do not hate work. In fact, I still want to do meaningful things. I've been thinking about writing again. Back in college, I used to write for a local newspaper sometimes. I had almost forgotten that version of myself during corporate life. Maybe now I will slowly return to it. Maybe I will do small, independent work in the future to support extra expenses, occasional travel, or family outings. But one thing is certain: I do not want to return to corporate employment again. Not because every company is evil, and not because every manager is bad. There are good people everywhere. But I personally reached a point where stability was no longer enough for me. I wanted freedom more than comfort. And after thinking about it for many years, I finally chose it. Of course, I know some people watching this video may disagree with my decision. Some people may think leaving a stable career was irresponsible. And honestly, I understand that perspective too. Everyone's situation is different. Some people genuinely enjoy corporate life. Some people build meaningful careers there. Some people need the stability more than anything else. There is nothing wrong with that. I am not saying everyone should quit their jobs. This video is simply my personal story. For me, after more than a decade, I realized that the lifestyle itself was slowly draining something important from me. And maybe the biggest realization came from something very simple. Life keeps moving quietly while we are busy postponing it.
For many years, I kept telling myself, maybe later I'll finally have time. Maybe after the next promotion. Maybe after saving a little more. But later never really arrives on its own. One day you suddenly notice your parents have become older. Your child has grown taller. Your own energy is different. And entire years have disappeared into routines you barely remember. That realization affected me deeply.
I did not want to spend the rest of my life constantly waiting for freedom sometime in the future. I wanted at least some part of my life to belong fully to me while I am still healthy enough to enjoy it. And honestly, my definition of freedom has become very simple now. A quiet morning, time with family, less stress, enough money for basic needs, and the ability to control my own time. That is enough for me. Maybe years from now, I will look back and think this was the best decision of my life, or maybe I will face new difficulties I cannot see yet. I honestly do not know. But for the first time in many years, my life feels emotionally honest. And right now, that feeling matters more to me than titles, office politics, or corporate status. This video has already become longer than I expected. In another video, I may talk in detail about how I built my investments over the last 12 years, how much I invested monthly, what mistakes I made, and how I eventually reached financial freedom slowly through the stock market. But for today, I simply wanted to share the personal side of this journey. At the end of the day, financial freedom is not really about becoming rich. For some people, it is simply about getting their life back. I recently created a Facebook group called Practical Fire for anyone interested in financial independence and early retirement. If you're working toward financial freedom through saving, investing, and smart financial decisions, feel free to join us. Group link in the description below.